How Europeans discovered Sanskrit, the intellectual encounter that reshaped linguistics and history. Introduction. Bridging East and West through shared linguistic roots. In our modern world, East and West often appear as distinct entities, separated by vast distances, both geographic and cultural. When we picture a European or American, we might envision a tall figure with fair or blonde features, speaking languages that seem worlds apart from the tongues of South Asia. Languages, like people, are frequently treated as vitally different, belonging to isolated cultural spheres with little in common. Yet, a simple personal curiosity can shatter these illusions. Basic words reveal striking similarities. Terms for parts of the body such as hand, Sanskrit hasta, English hand; foot, Sanskrit pada, English foot; Latin pes, Greek pos. Family relations like father, Sanskrit pita/pitar, Latin pater; English father, Greek pater, Hindi pita; mother, Sanskrit mater/mata, Latin mater, English mother; and brother, Sanskrit brata, English brother, Latin frata; and numerals, Sanskrit dva, 2, with Italian due and English 2, tri, 3, with tra/tres/3, sapta, 7, with seti/7, nava, 9, with nove/9. Similarly, everyday calendars in India and Pakistan preserve these ancient roots through desimonth names: Chaitra, Baisakh, Baishakha, Yeth, Jeshtha, Asar, Ashada, Sawan, Shravana, and others. Even a single word like dukh, sorrow or suffering, spoken in Sariki in regions like Draban near Dera Ismail Khan, carries echoes of the deep past, resonating with Pali Dukkha, the central concept taught by the Buddha. These are not coincidences, but traces of a shared ancestral heritage, pointing directly to the Indo-Aryan branch within the larger Indo-European family of languages. Here, Sanskrit stands as one of the most vital clues, an ancient, highly structured language that served as the foundational source for its many daughter languages across the Indian subcontinent. From the classical Sanskrit of the Vedas and epics emerged the Middle Indo-Aryan Prakrits, which in turn evolved through centuries of phonological change, regional divergence, and everyday vernacular use, into the modern Indo-Aryan languages spoken today, including Hindi, Bengali, Marathi, Gujarati, Punjabi, Oriya, Assamese, and numerous others. This lineage illustrates how a single sophisticated ancestral tongue branched into a rich linguistic family, each member bearing unmistakable familial resemblances in vocabulary, grammar, and sound patterns. The European discovery of Sanskrit formed part of broader 18th and 19th century European initiatives to understand humanity's past, including the decipherment of ancient scripts from the Middle East and Egypt. Scholars such as Jean-François Champollion unlocked Egyptian hieroglyphs in the 1820s, while Henry Rawlinson, Edward Hincks, and others deciphered cuneiform inscriptions in Akkadian, Old Persian, and related tongues. Figures like Sir William Jones and their successors revealed this shared heritage not just for Europeans, but for people across Pakistan, India, and Afghanistan as well, including legacies from groups like the Saka, Indo-Scythians. This intellectual encounter with Sanskrit fundamentally reshaped linguistics and our understanding of history, showing that the apparent East-West divide was, in many ways, a later overlay on a far older common story. The European discovery of Sanskrit was not a single dramatic revelation, but a gradual, centuries-long process shaped by commerce, colonialism, missionary zeal, and scholarly curiosity. What began as scattered observations by merchants and priests in the 16th century culminated in the late 18th century with a systematic linguistic breakthrough. This birthed the field of comparative philology and the concept of the Indo-European language family, forcing Europeans to reconsider the origins of their own classical languages Greek and Latin, the antiquity of human civilization, and the deep connections spanning Eurasia from the British Isles to the Indian subcontinent. Far from mere academic interest, it was deeply intertwined with the practical demands of empire building in India, where British administrators needed to understand and govern according to indigenous legal and cultural traditions preserved in Sanskrit texts. Early encounters, merchants, Jesuits, and forgotten insights. 16th to 17th centuries. Early European contacts with India, primarily through Portuguese traders and missionaries following Vasco da Gama's pioneering route in 1498, brought sporadic awareness of Indian languages. Yet Sanskrit, the refined, Samskrita, meaning perfected or well-formed, liturgical language of Hindu scriptures like the Vedas, preserved with remarkable fidelity through oral recitation by pandits and written traditions, remained largely opaque to most outsiders. Its true significance emerged only when Europeans began to study it not as an exotic curiosity, but as a key to deeper historical and linguistic truths. The first recorded European to notice linguistic affinities between Sanskrit and European languages was the Italian merchant Filippo Sassetti. Travelling to Portuguese Cochin, modern Kochi, in the 1580s for spice and gem trade, Sassetti was a cultured Florentine with a humanist education. In letters to his friend Bernardo Davanzati, notably one dated January 1585 or 1586, he highlighted striking resemblances in numerals and basic vocabulary. Sanskrit sapta, 7, and Italian seta, dia, 2, and dew, tree, 3, and tre, asta, 8, and otto, nava, 9, and nove. He also noted parallels in words for God, deva and dio, snake, sarpa and serpa, and several common verbs and nouns. These observations, made amid the hustle of colonial commerce in a vibrant trading hub, were prescient. They foreshadowed the Indo-European discovery, but remained isolated. Sassetti died in Goa in 1588, and his letters, though later published in Florence, 1716 to 1745, attracted little attention in a Europe still dominated by biblical notions of language origins, particularly the idea that Hebrew was the primordial tongue of humanity after the Tower of Babel. More systematic efforts came from Jesuit missionaries, who recognized the need to engage deeply with Indian intellectual traditions to advance their evangelizing mission effectively. Heinrich Roth, 1620 to 1668, a German Jesuit, arrived in Mughal India in 1654 and immersed himself in the court of Emperor Aurangzeb. Studying under Hindu pandits in Agra and Delhi, Roth mastered the Devanagari script and classical Sanskrit grammar. Between 1660 and 1662, he composed the first European grammar of Sanskrit in Latin, along with a Sanskrit-Latin vocabulary and translations from the Bhagavata Purana. His work, based heavily on indigenous traditions like the Sarasvata grammar, demonstrated remarkable accuracy and depth, including discussions of accents, vowel length, and phonetic rules, reflecting genuine scholarly engagement rather than superficial observation. Roth's younger contemporary, Johann Ernst Hanckleden, 1681 to 1732, continued this tradition in Kerala, producing a Malayalam Sanskrit Portuguese dictionary and a Sanskrit grammar known as Grammatica Grandonica. These Jesuit manuscripts, however, largely remained confined to mission archives in Rome or circulated privately within ecclesiastical networks. Factors such as the laborious nature of handwritten copying, Vatican censorship or caution regarding non-Christian texts, the challenges of long-distance communication, and a lack of broader European academic infrastructure, like printing presses dedicated to Oriental scripts, prevented their widespread dissemination. By 1700, mainstream European scholarship remained largely ignorant of Sanskrit's existence, let alone its profound connections to Greek and Latin. Other early observers, like the English Jesuit Thomas Stevens, noted similar affinities in letters from Goa, but these too had limited immediate impact. Colonial imperatives, British East India Company and the practical turn, mid to late 18th century. The momentum shifted decisively with British expansion in India. After military victories in Bengal, notably Plassey in 1757, and the establishment of de facto company rule, administrators confronted the immense challenge of governing a vast, diverse population with ancient customs and legal systems. Warren Hastings, the first Governor-General, adopted a pragmatic policy of ruling Hindus according to their own laws, primarily encoded in Sanskrit texts like the Manusmriti, Laws of Manu, and various Dharmashastras. This necessitated reliable translations, linguistic expertise, and cultural understanding, moving Sanskrit study from missionary sidelines to an essential tool of governance and administration. Key figures emerged under Hastings' patronage. Charles Wilkins, a self-taught linguist and typesetter, learned Sanskrit in Varanasi, Benares, and produced the first English translation of the Bhagavad Gita in 1785, along with the first Devanagari typeface for European printing, making ancient texts accessible to a wider audience. Nathaniel Brassey Halid compiled A Code of Gentoo Laws, 1776, initially from Persian intermediaries, but came to appreciate Sanskrit's foundational role. The pivotal figure was Sir William Jones, 1746 to 1794, a brilliant polymath, lawyer, poet and Orientalist knighted for his linguistic prowess. Arriving in Calcutta in 1783 as a Supreme Court judge, Jones immersed himself in Sanskrit under the guidance of local pandits. Within months, he achieved remarkable fluency sufficient for engaging with classical texts like the Vedas, epics, and legal treatises. In 1784, Jones founded the Asiatic Society of Bengal in Calcutta, an institution dedicated to the systematic study of Indian languages, history, sciences, arts, and antiquities. This marked the institutionalization of Orientalist scholarship, blending colonial utility with genuine intellectual inquiry and fostering collaboration between Europeans and Indian scholars. The Breakthrough, William Jones and the Comparative Revolution, 1786. On February 2, 1786, Jones delivered his influential third anniversary discourse on the Hindus to the Asiatic Society. In a passage that reverberates through linguistic history, he declared with eloquence and precision, "The Sanskrit language, whatever be its antiquity, is of a wonderful structure, more perfect than the Greek, more copious than the Latin, and more exquisitely refined than either, yet bearing to both of them a stronger affinity, both in the roots of verbs and in the forms of grammar than could possibly have been produced by accident. So strong indeed that no philologer could examine them all three, without believing them to have sprung from some common source, which, perhaps, no longer exists." He extended this cautiously to Gothic, Celtic, and Old Persian, while exploring connections in philosophy, religion, and history. This was revolutionary. It dismantled prevailing theories, Hebrew as the universal mother tongue, random diffusion of words through trade, or Sanskrit as a mere derivative of Persian, and proposed a testable scientific hypothesis of common descent from a lost ancestral language, later termed Proto-Indo-European, PIE. Jones's strength lay in his systematic evidence, not just superficial vocabulary, but deep grammatical structures, verb roots, inflections, and case systems. Though not the absolute first observer, his public, rigorous articulation in English, disseminated through scholarly journals, print, and institutions, ignited a pan-European movement. Building the science, 19th century scholars and proofs. Jones's hypothesis inspired rigorous verification across Europe. Henry Thomas Colebrook demonstrated Sanskrit's deep literary history, with texts predating significant Greek contact by centuries. Franz Bopp's landmark 1816 comparative study analysed verb conjugations across Sanskrit, Greek, Latin, Persian and Germanic languages, establishing regular sound correspondences. Danish scholar Rasmus Rask and German Jacob Grimm further refined the methodology with sound laws, notably Grimm's law, which explained systematic consonant shifts, for example, PIEP becoming F in Germanic languages, Latin pater versus English father, PED versus foot. Scholars amassed overwhelming evidence through root comparisons, for example, Sanskrit bar to carry/bear, cognate with English bear, Greek pharaoh, Latin pharaoh, grammatical parallels, Sanskrit's 8-case system mirroring ancient Greek and Latin, and predictable sound changes. By the mid-19th century, August Schleicher reconstructed substantial parts of PIE, even composing a short fable in the hypothetical ancestral language to demonstrate its features. This comparative method became the cornerstone of historical linguistics, influencing fields from etymology to anthropology and providing a model for studying language families worldwide. Panini, the ancient Indian foundation, encountered by the West. One of the most astonishing discoveries for Europeans was the sophistication of indigenous Indian linguistics. Panini, circa 6th to 4th century BCE, an ancient grammarian from what is now northwestern Pakistan or Afghanistan, authored the Astadhyayi, nearly 4,000 concise sutras, rules, in a highly formalized, almost algebraic system. Using phonetic ordering, meta-rules, abbreviations, pratyaharas, and generative principles, it exhaustively described Sanskrit's morphology, syntax, and phonetics. When translated and studied in the 19th century, it astonished Western scholars like Friedrich Max Müller, who hailed it as the most perfect grammatical system ever devised by human intellect. Panini's work predated Western formal grammar by over 2 millennia. Its influence extended far. Ferdinand de Saussure drew on its structural rigour for modern linguistics, and its generative approach echoes in Noam Chomsky's theories of universal grammar. Wider ramifications, the diversification of Indo-Aryan languages, and enduring echoes. The discovery illuminated not only language origins, but also history, religion, migration, and identity. It established the vast Indo-European family, spanning from Icelandic and Irish in the west to Bengali and Sinhala in the east, encompassing branches like Indo-Iranian, Hellenic, Italic, Germanic, Slavic, and Celtic. However, it also fueled 19th century misinterpretations, such as the racialization of Aryan, from Sanskrit Arya, originally meaning noble or honourable, in a cultural/linguistic sense for ancient Indo-Iranian peoples. This term was later disastrously exploited by ideologies like Nazism. Today, it is understood strictly as a linguistic and cultural designation. Debates over the PIE homeland continue, with genetic, archaeological, for example, Yamnaya culture, and linguistic evidence strongly supporting the Pontic-Caspian steppe hypothesis, around 4000 to 2500 BCE, involving pastoralist migrations with horses and wheels, though alternatives, like the Armenian or Anatolian hypotheses, persist. Building directly on this foundation, one can trace how the Indo-Aryan branch proliferated into numerous modern languages through organic, community-driven processes. Vedic Sanskrit, or closely related Old Indo-Aryan dialects, served as the ancient foundation, preserved in the Vedas and ritual use. Alongside this elite liturgical form, everyday vernaculars, known as Prakrits, natural or derived speech, evolved among the populace. These Middle Indo-Aryan dialects, attested in Ashokan edicts, 3rd century BCE, the Pali Buddhist canon, and Jain texts underwent phonological simplifications, for example, loss of certain consonant clusters, reduction of complex inflections, and regional divergences. Factors included geographic spread across the subcontinent, contact with non-Indo-Aryan substrates, Dravidian in the south, Austroasiatic/Munda, political fragmentation after empires like the Mauryan and Kushan, and literary use in drama, poetry, and inscriptions. By the Upper Brahmsha stage, roughly 6th to 12th centuries CE, further evolution produced the modern Indo-Aryan languages: Hindi-Urdu, Bengali, Marathi, Gujarati, Punjabi, Saraiki, Sindhi, Nepali, and others, through continued sound changes, vocabulary borrowing, and grammatical restructuring. This mirrors how Vulgar Latin diversified into the Romance languages, French, Spanish, Italian, etc. Sanskrit itself endured as a learned language of scholarship, ritual, and literature, profoundly influencing modern Indo-Aryan vocabularies, much like Latin and Greek shaped European ones, and even providing roots for scientific and technical terms. In regions like Pakistan and Afghanistan, these layers are particularly vivid. The Saka, or Indo-Scythians, nomadic Iranian peoples, migrated from Central Asia, establishing kingdoms in Gandhara, the Indus Valley, and parts of northern India from the late 2nd century BCE. Their rule blended Iranian, Greek, and local elements, leaving numismatic and artistic legacies that further enriched the linguistic and cultural mosaic. In essence, the European discovery of Sanskrit was a profound act of intellectual bridge building. It revealed a shared human heritage across continents while highlighting the dynamic processes, migration, adaptation, cultural exchange, and organic evolution, through which a single ancestral linguistic stream branched into today's rich diversity. From the personal resonance of Duk in Saraiki villages at the foot of the Suleiman Mountains to the scholarly halls of Calcutta in Europe, these echoes remind us that knowledge often emerges at the intersection of power, curiosity, and cross-cultural encounter. By appreciating this history, alongside parallel European efforts to decipher the ancient Middle East and Egypt, we foster a deeper understanding of our intertwined past and common linguistic ancestry, connecting listeners today from distant shores in a single, enduring narrative of human connection.